You're listening to the Untitled Car Show in partnership with RightFootDown.com. Visit RightFootDown for your daily automotive fix. If you enjoyed today's program, please tell a friend. It's the best way to support this show. If you want to visit the archives, go to YouTube and search for Untitled Car Show. That'll bring you to the archived episodes. If you want to follow the show, just search for Untitled Car Show on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can always send an email to the show at untitledcarshow@rightfootdown.com. We're so glad you decided to spend the next hour or so with us. Without further ado, let's get into today's program. See, I'm still working on what to say because I know the intro just introduced the show, so we'll just go with that being the intro to it. On tonight's program, we have Patrick George. He runs a small online publication that I'm not sure a lot of people have heard of, Jalopnik. No, obviously, he's the editor-in-chief over at Jalopnik, one of the largest automotive news websites on the planet. Patrick, it's an honor to have you here today. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be back. Thank you so much for having me on. I will start by saying that I'm a little disappointed in you. I got to start by saying that though.
Oh, why is that?
Well, I mean, the Untitled Car Show podcast has been around for what, a year and a half now, 2 years almost, and it still doesn't have a title yet. I mean, man, I figured you would have delivered on something by now, but I guess Untitled's what we're going with, huh?
Mm-hmm. My plan is just eventually to sell the naming rights to someone when I get big enough. I think that's the plan. Like, I think in Hormel's car show, something like that, or maybe the Winston Untitled Car Show, or the Winston Car
That's
Show.
brilliant. That's brilliant, man. The brands are out there throwing money around like crazy. You should be ready to take it from them.
Mm-hmm. I'm just saying this was my idea well before the Grand Tour guys had Your Name Here corner. I'm just saying I think I can sue them for that. I need to get Steve on that one. So it's been there's a small dog that's trying to attack you. Run.
There is, yes. I'm sorry. You might hear him. He's the new dog. His name is Kingsley. He's a Pomeranian who weighs 8 pounds, and he barks at everything because he thinks he's a big, tough, badass, big dog. So if you hear that, and also like I told Ike at the beginning, I'm kind of getting over a chest cold allergy thing here in Austin. So if I cough and hack a lot, I apologize in advance. We're kind of a mess in my house right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will try my best to edit out all your coughing and hacking.
There you go.
There we go. Nice practice there for me. So, it's been I can't imagine. Normally I go, if you don't know Patrick George, he does Jalopnik. He's the editor-in-chief over there. You've been in charge over there, what, about 2 years now?
Yeah, coming up on 2 years. I was made managing editor, which I guess in May or April or May, and I effectively ran the site while Matt Hardigree was busy appearing on Bloomberg most of the time. And then I was made editor-in-chief in November of 2015. So yeah, coming up on 2 years of actually running the place. So it's been a lot of interesting things have happened in that time.
Well, while we go ahead and get right into that, since that's a wonderful segue, you were the head of a section of Gawker during the whole, lawsuit, Gawker being bought out by Univision, and kind of the unknown in between there. I mean, how did it affect you on a personal and professional level?
Boy, that's a tough one to answer. I guess the short answer is a lot. I mean, it was. I think that we certainly, this is a very close, tight knit company. I don't know if people realize that, but everybody here really, really likes each other a lot. Really works together. People are roommates. They're friends outside of work. I'll definitely say that Jalopnik fortunately didn't bear the brunt of that whole thing as nearly as badly as some of the other sites did. Certainly as bad as Gawker.com did. Obviously, it was shuttered in the process of the bankruptcy and the sale, but it was still a very difficult year. When you're a part of a company that's going through bankruptcy, you don't have money, you don't have resources. It's hard to hire, it's hard to spend, it's hard to attract talent, it's hard to keep people around. And I always thought that Jalopnik would survive no matter what because, not to brag or anything, but, our site is so big, our readership is so big, the brand is so big, we've been around a while. But I didn't know what form that survival would take. I didn't know that if something really bad happened, we would get sold to some owners that we really didn't want to be sold to, or we'd be broken off from the rest of the group and have to deal with the consequences of that. So, I knew we would do our best to weather it. I just didn't know what the future would hold while all of it was happening. And it made things difficult. It made it tough to plan things, tough to, in terms of hiring, talent, stuff like that. But we still did some really amazing work in that time with very limited resources. And for that, I'm incredibly proud of my staff being able to pull that off. And these days, things are a lot better. Univision so far has been a very good owner to us. They've been very hands-off. Deadspin tweeted at Ted Cruz a few weeks ago, told him to go eat shit, and no one was fired over that. I don't think that can happen at any other media company in America. So, that should tell you how hands-off they are, but they've given us resources. They've given us the ability to hire and do things we want to do. So we're in a much stronger place than we were, 6 months to a year ago, certainly.
Well, it's almost like there's another publication that came out around that time that almost smelled blood into water, maybe to try and you were a little low on resources, like you said, and everything. I don't know. Fuck it. But The Drive came out. They, kind of tried to enter that space as Jalopnik and, Gawker were facing all that trouble. Jalopnik is such a great site, and it was started by Spinelli, and then kind of to have him reappear in that space just at the lowest point of Jalopnik. Did that ever cause any worry, or, is Jalopnik, and I, not to, blow too much smoke up your ass, but is Jalopnik such an amazing place that there was never really a worry about the competition coming in and taking over your space?
I think I'd be nuts if I didn't worry about competition from time to time. But I think at the end of the day, we have a unique product that people love, that's established, that's been on the internet a long time, and that it's hard to launch new platforms and new websites in 2017. I think The Drive would be the first to tell you that. That comes with a lot of challenges. But I also benefit from having this staff and this team of people and a parent company that afford us a lot of freedom, that's able to do some really awesome things. And that we do things here that I don't think that a lot of other publications would be able to do, or at least do it in the way we do it. And I think that our readers recognize that. And that's a big part of what makes us successful. So, I think I was, more than anything, I was just focused on, making us the best version of what we could be. So, yeah.
Was there, I know you weren't able to hire people, you weren't able to, and you're kind of being the editor-in-chief, but you're away from the main office, I'm sure there's a better support network of people to kind of cry on their shoulders out in New York, whereas you're kind of, off in Austin dealing with the cedar allergies while everyone else is in New York probably, I can't imagine Orlov or Balaban really being heavy drinkers, but whatever they do,
you'd be surprised. I think all of us are for the most part. That's just par for the course for journalism.
It's a stereotype for a reason, I guess.
Yeah.
I just imagining wherever they're sitting, it's either in a back of a Volkswagen somewhere on its side. I'm sure there's a bar that has half a Volkswagen in it in New York somewhere. It just has to exist,
It must be. If it exists anywhere, you can find it in New York City. That's been my experience going up there.
Such a weird town. Almost as good as Chicago. But that's an aside thing. So on a personal level, then, did it really affect you? I'm sure you were stressed out more than you were prior to. Because it kind of had to come as a surprise. The lawsuit kind of came out of nowhere, from an outside observer. Not that the lawsuit came out of nowhere, but it didn't seem like it would ever really have the legs to get there without, what they had. So, were you shocked when the thing came down, and on a personal note, did you find yourself stressed out at all over it? Or I don't know. I know you said you had a good coping mechanism, you have good people around you, but that initial moment just had to be kind of crazy, right?
Sure. I mean, I became EIC right when I was promoted. It was like we are preparing to fight this out in court. It is going to be very, very expensive. We are going to have some austerity measures in place so that we have the money to do that. But we thought we would prevail in court eventually. I mean, we could take up an entire podcast, you and I, Ike, just talking about that case and what I believe went wrong there. I mean, like putting aside all judgments about whether you think that Hogan's story was the right thing to do, right thing to publish or not. I don't think it was a case that ever should have gone to a jury. And we thought that we would prevail in the end, and then we were sort of told that. But I mean, it ended up not being the case. And when that happened, it was a big shock to all of us. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. It wasn't a shock. But at the end of the day, I mean, it was, of course it was stressful to go through all that. But like I said earlier, I wasn't impacted by this nearly as much as some of my counterparts were. And the way I look at my job is, when you're the editor, you're the leader, and I try to put a good face on things and reassure people and just, be as confident as I could and be like, hey, whatever happens, we're going to get through it. Because when you have people depending on you, I think that's what you need to do is just kind of step up and lead from the front, as silly as that sounds. I mean, that's what I try to do anyway. So I hope I did that as well as I could. I think I did.
Well, from outside looking in, there was always especially in the beginning, it was like I expected more freak out from the whole organization. Like, well, this has got to be stressful, and we're not going to see the great product that we've been expecting to see. And there was really never if you were watching just Jalopnik from the outside and you just watched the articles that had no mention of the lawsuit or anything, there was never a diminishing quality. It was never something where you'd be able to go, well, this is where they, this is the point where they had no money, and this is when the austerity measures went in from, them planning the lawsuit, and here's where Univision took over. It's been this is the product. It's been a fantastic, I don't know how you managed to find, this is one of your talents, I suppose, but find these talented people, surround yourself with them. They're putting out such a great product. I mean, from last year, I think Steph's article about her concussion was one of the best things I've ever read.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's just absolutely fantastic. So that kind of plays to your ability to lead, because if you didn't lead well, it would have all gone to shit, I'm sure. People are good up until people don't know who to look to, I suppose. So.
No, that's very kind of you to say, and I appreciate it tremendously, because believe me, there hasn't been a day that's gone by, on good days and bad, where I haven't been like, am I driving this place into the wall like it's a Camaro at Belle Isle? I mean, you always have that shadow of self-doubt in your mind. But I also benefit from, like I said, my staff is amazing, my team is amazing. Morale here is really good because we have writers that are paid to write whatever they want. They have the freedom to chase the stories they want and do their thing. So when I checked in with people, I'm like, hey, how do you feel about things? Like, nah, things are good as long as I'm able to keep doing this. Cool, So I'm very grateful for that outcome.
So one of the things I had Will Clavey on for everyone listening, it came out today, and he made mention of the fact that he thinks because you are so good at editing and time management and everything, he's somewhat convinced you might have a clone. So are you the real Patrick George, or are you actually a clone, I guess? Man,
I fucking wish I had a clone. You have no idea. I don't know if I can swear on your podcast or not. I'll try to avoid it.
No, you swear all the fuck you want.
But we put out a call for a managing editor recently, who's someone who's going to help us sort of run the day-to-day operations of the website, posting and social media, and helping us edit some of the stories, just kind of another editor type role to have. And I was like, if only I could clone myself for this gig. But that's pretty narcissistic when you think that way. So instead, we have a couple of really awesome candidates that we're looking at right now, who I think are going to just add to the quality and diversity of what we do. So, but it is a time consuming job. I mean, I try not to say that too much, because I sound like a pussy when I say that. It's I run a jokey fucking car website on the internet. I'm not digging ditches. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a police officer. This is a fun job. I work hard at it, and I spend nights editing stories and making sure the product's good, making sure it serves our readers, making sure we're growing. But at the same time, like I consider myself pretty fortunate to be doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to keep that in mind, you know?
Well, it's so much more a mental exercise when you have to stay on task, you do stuff, because, you know, when you're working, I'm not sure if you've worked manual labor jobs in the past, but
a couple, yeah.
Time sometimes just goes by super fast because I haven't thought about anything in the last like 3 hours. It's literally just been like, hit this thing with a hammer, and that's all I'm going to do all day. And sometimes it goes by super slow because all you can think about is what you'd rather be doing. Whereas, you know, getting into doing the podcasting thing, getting into the journalism thing and working on, I can't imagine there's so much time and so much effort just working on time management that I don't know like how someone at your level could possibly do it. I mean, do you have any like tips or tricks for time management, or is it just something you've naturally been able to do?
It's something I definitely had to adjust to, for sure. I mean, I've always been pretty good at multitasking. One thing I benefit from is, like, my wife's in graduate school, so Monday and Tuesday nights, like, she's in class, and she doesn't get home until late. So, like, I should be, like, working on a hobby, like woodworking or painting or, you know, devil worship or some shit like that. But instead, I'm usually just, like, editing stories for the week and freelancer stories. And you kind of learn to triage, like, you know, like my day-to-day routines. Like, I get up early. I used to write the morning shift, but I've been trying to pawn that off on other people now. And then I just kind of edit stories all day. I'm in meetings off and on. I have memos to write, stuff like that. And then, you know, at night I'm trying to edit longer stuff. But I'm actually flattered that Clavey said that, like, he thinks I'm a good attentive editor, because I feel like a lot of the times my freelancer stories are the ones that are like 2 days, 3 days, a week, 2 weeks later, like, are you still doing this? I'm like, yes, I haven't gotten to it, but I promise you I will. So, you know, I do what I can, like, as long as I'm awake, you know?
Yeah, there's only so much hours in a day, but you do a good job working.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
This is how we butter you up in the beginning. We give you all the smoke up your ass. And then the super hard questions that we don't have any because we're not that sort of journalists here. But I don't know. I think a lot of people, they aspire to kind of, you know, get into the field and kind of work their way up. And I don't know, you've started with Jalopnik. I know we kind of talked about this a while ago as just a normal author and worked your way up to editor-in-chief now. And, you know, going from that to where you're at now, I'm sure the biggest change has kind of been just time management, right?
Mm-hmm. Time management, and I think that, like, learning to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and, like, what I should focus on, what I shouldn't focus on, and kind of, like, getting everybody on the staff to, like, a level of, like, here's what I expect every day. And, like, everybody's on board with that now, which is really helpful. And, like, the machine runs pretty well at this point, you know, and kind of figure out the overall direction for things. But that wasn't super hard because, like, I inherited, like, a great product. I inherited a great website, a lot of great writers, and it was just, like, this was not something that needed, like, this giant overhaul. It needed, like, some fine-tuning, and it needed more resources and staff, and it needed, like, a little bit of roughening out around the edges. But, you know, I couldn't have asked for a better situation to come into.
So we'll kind of, because if you're interested in all of that and all of the story, that we went over that in the last episode, which you can probably find in a link on the article if you're viewing this online. But the stuff, sorry, weird random time for a brain fart there. The last year at Jalopnik, do you have a couple of articles that stand out to you as being your favorites? You know, either yourself has done or your staff has done.
Sure, not myself, because, like, one of the big downsides that you're talking about, like, running the place and time management, I have a lot less time to write than I used to, which is a bummer because I like writing. Like, that's why I got into this. But I've since learned I like editing more, so it's not a big deal. I'm not that great a writer anyway. We had a lot of really awesome stories last year that I was incredibly proud of. Like Andrew Collins' 16-hour Mexican hell ride when he went on the Baja 1000 and nearly died. Steph's concussion story, obviously, which, again, almost died, but it wasn't, like, funny or irreverent. It was just a really thoughtful, honest, very well-written story about what it takes to come back from that. And that's the thing that I don't think a lot of people really understand, and she did an amazing job articulating that. I've been really proud of our Faraday Future coverage because, I mean, when that that whole thing happened at CES of 2016, I was like, this just doesn't add up, this whole thing. And like, I wanted all year to be like digging into who these people are and what they're doing. And we finally started doing that. And I think that our reporting on them has, by and large, like led both automotive and tech journalism in covering them. Yeah, we had a lot of cool stuff covering Top Gear, covering the Grand Tour when that launched. We had some really great investigations I was proud of, covering Dieselgate, the stripped out Volkswagen Golf, like the fun stuff and the goofy stuff, and like here's what you need to know about the diesel settlement. Drove some really good cars. We had a good year in 2016. I mean, and I look back on it now and I'm like, I'm really proud of what we accomplished here, in spite of everything that happened. And David Tracy took a $600 Craigslist Jeep to Moab and kicked everyone's asses. Although his current Jeep project, he is far less optimistic that he's going to be able to pull that off than he was a year ago. And I when he told me, I was like, oh, you'll be fine. You're smart. You'll figure it out. And then I read that. I don't know if everyone and they listened to the podcast. David did a story. It was about like this. He bought a 1948 Jeep CJ to fix up and go to the Jeep Easter Safari in Moab, Utah. And he was like, this is going to be the death of me, this project. And I was like, oh, you're fine. You're being dramatic. And then I read the article. And I saw the photos of like green Ninja Turtle ooze coming out of his like transmission case. And I was like, yeah, man, this isn't a car. It's a super fun sight on wheels. And I'm amazed the EPA hasn't like cracked down his house yet, while there still is one. So yeah, fun year. We're trying to top it this year with whatever we can do.
I see the tweets from Dave and the articles, and I'm like, I want to go just give him a hug. And he's in Michigan too, so he doesn't have it's freezing cold every time he goes out to work on that poor car. So.
David lives the jalop life. He really does. I mean, like sometimes to a fault. Sometimes you see like asshole commenters on our site, like no one at Jalopnik's a real car guy, and I'm like, first of all of us are like hardcore car people, like to a fault, and second, like David Tracy is like enough of a car guy to be like to feel like 10 car guys. I mean, he's nuts. He lives, eats, and breathes this stuff. So he's wonderful in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, all the staff I think I've had. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anyone at the moment. I'm sure you've hired a couple of new folks I got to get on the show just because that's how I operate. I go, who should I talk to? Well, let me just go down to Jalopnik staff roles here and just pick out someone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it makes my life a lot easier, like, talented, interesting people. There we go, Jalopnik. So it's you got such an interesting staff. You got such a great staff working for you. Honestly, I'm impressed, blow some more smoke up your ass of like how well how well Jalopnik has kind of weathered the storm, come out the other side, been bigger and better. You can see all the love and effort still in it. There's not ever been a skipped, missed moment or skipped beat or anything. And it's been, a lot of that's to you. And speaking of like stuff like Faraday Future and working, towards that, the future that we're kind of inevitably headed towards. I know we talked a little bit about getting into the autonomous driving and where you see kind of the future of automobiles going, and then maybe we can bring that into how you think that might affect Jalopnik later on. So.
Sure, absolutely. That's something I think about every day. So happy to talk about that. So
first of all, when do you think we're going to see autonomous cars become a bit of a norm? I'm not talking about 50% of cars on the road, but maybe like 20% of cars on the road.
Man, that's tough to say. It is, because I think that the prevailing wisdom and based on like everything that I've seen and read about this is that the technology itself will be ready to go between 5 and 10 years from now. But the everything else that goes with that, the law, the insurance regulations, who is at fault if someone dies, all of that I think will take a lot longer. When you look at how slowly your government moves, how bad is it catching up on any kind of technology, whether it's cybersecurity, regulation of high-speed internet networks, things like that. Like that stuff takes years, but beyond when the tech itself is ready. So I don't know. I think that we're going to be seeing cars be increasingly autonomous over the next few years. I mean, you drive luxury cars now. That a lot of them, under many circumstances, will like largely drive themselves. I'm not even talking about Tesla autopilot. I mean, like an Infinity on the highway will mostly do like 90% of driving for you. When will these cars be like commercially available, where they're just fully driverless? I don't know. I'd say 5-10 years, but I think there's a chance that some of these cars will go on sale, but like before we have this stuff figured out. Like some bold company, some startup like Tesla would do that, and it's like, well, we're just gonna put this out there and see what happens. And that may be the best way to test the technology. I don't know, but I think that the legalities of it are going to take a little longer than the tech itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tesla was a big proponent of. I mean, if Tesla didn't just say we're going to put out this car and it's just going to be a self-driving vehicle and that's just how it is, because every other car manufacturer, is in this mindset of like the old way things worked, where you'd put out a car, but you would take 6 years to test the suspension components, and then you would test the headlights, and that would take you a couple of years. And by the time the car came out, you're already working on not only the generation after that, but the generation after that. And when it comes to features and any sort of innovation, a lot of times the way the car world worked was completely contrary to the way the tech world worked. And then you have Tesla coming in and just going, "Not hell with it. It's because we have the equipment, we have the technology, so here it is." And
yeah.
You have a disruptor like that in the marketplace, but then I can't imagine anyone, maybe someone who's planning on doing it now, but we probably hear about them just going, "You know what, to hell with it, we're just going to put this out, and that's just the way it's going to be, and it's going to be a self-driving car." That would take, I think, a lot more huevos, for the lack of a better term, than even Tesla did. So. And
I frankly, I think that like if they did that, you'd see them releasing this car, hypothetically speaking, in like several different states. And then, California more than likely would probably like crack down on this right away, be like, "No, we're not allowing this. You can't do it here." And then maybe a state that's more eager to test the technology because it's good for the industry, like Michigan, is going to be more permissive, or more like, libertarian, conservative-leaning state that like doesn't give a shit, like Texas is going to be like, "Sure, do whatever you want. Like that's fine. Where it's good for business." That is something that could happen, I think.
Yeah, I believe I read an article a bit ago about Michigan was trying to lure in tech companies to test their cars in Michigan, and I guess if you can survive Michigan, you could survive anywhere.
Right, and that's the other part of the equation too. And I'm not sure if you were talking about economics or weather, but both are true in that case, because whenever you see these Google and like Uber and Tesla autonomous cars in these demo videos, they're just driving around sunny Southern California having a great fucking time, and it's 70 degrees outside and there's a nice breeze and you're waving to the pedestrians with no hands on the wheel. And as like most Americans know, like that most driving isn't like that. Like take your autonomous car to a place like Boston or Pittsburgh or Detroit in the winter or New York in the winter and like see if it'll handle snow, see if it'll handle ice, see if it'll handle heavy rain. That's what we have. That's like the other big tech hurdle we have to figure out, is making sure that like the weather is something that can be mitigated by these cars, because right now they can't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious too to see how it will handle something as simple as a pothole, because there are potholes, and having lived in a northern state when I was first learning to drive, right around Chicago, there were times where you don't see a pothole, you hit a wheel into it, and you got a dead car because you bent the rim, and there's no getting around that. I don't think if you have a generation of people who grow up in autonomous cars, they're going to be the sort of people who are like, "Oh, the car is broke, let me get out and jack this thing up and put it on a spare tire." They're going to just be lost and clueless. Now, maybe 50 years from now, another car just comes by, picks them up, and takes them on their way. But that first stage, you're not going to have that sort of carryover. You're going to have to figure out how to baby these people. And I don't know if you could LiDAR that. I mean, I've never seen Tesla say anything, or any of these manufacturers say anything about pothole avoidance. It's always pedestrian avoidance, collision avoidance, never anything to save just the car from stupid stuff as simple as a pothole.
I mean, you talk about like a driver not knowing or caring how to change their tire. I mean, and a lot of people these days don't. But like that's always been the problem with Americans in general, but like human drivers, is that like we operate cars every day. We don't know how they work. We don't give a shit how they work. I mean, you ask the average driver like how an automatic transmission works, they don't have a clue. How an engine works, they don't have a clue. And I think I've told you this on the podcast before, but I think that one day, centuries from now, when human beings are extinct, like alien scientists or historians are going to come to this planet and they're going to look back at our historical records and be like, for a good chunk of some part of humanity's history, we let the humans like would pilot these 3,500-pound land missiles with no training whatsoever, that they didn't understand how they worked. Oh, and also, 30,000 people a year died of them in one country alone. That was considered normal and okay. And also there was traffic and pollution that they lost time and energy and ruined the environment from all of that. Like, it's crazy. Like, we don't know how cars work. And, I think that's like autonomous cars aren't a solution to that problem. Like, it's actually making it worse in a lot of ways.
Well, it almost might be better with electric cars then, because it's really simple to teach someone how an electric car works. It's one moving part. You got a battery, you got a motor, and you could. I mean, I'm just picturing like the science teacher, like in the future, like here's how an electric car works, and you can take out a 9-volt, you can take out a little DC motor and go, this is how this works. Take it apart. That's how just scale it up, and that's your parents' car, or the car you probably came in today, because everyone's just walking outside and hopping into these damn things. So I don't know. That makes it easier. I mean,
it is, and I mean, I think that you have to, when it comes to charging, you have to kind of get people to start thinking of their cars like their cell phones. Like, charge this at your charging station, charge it in your house every night, at your office when you can. Not like you treat your car like, oh, I got a tank of gas, and then I have a quarter tank left, I better fill it up. Like, you need to be constantly charging it in order for it to work the best. And of course, then there's a question of what does that mean for our electric grid?
Yeah, I know we're in bad shape, but I've been reading like Europe, like there's countries where they're at like 80% of capacity at the moment, and that's without electric cars. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, you throw electric cars in there and you throw in a hot summer and you just blew up the electric grid in that country.
And then you talk about air quality too, because like electricity in this country, in America, it's largely coal-fired plants. And like there has to be, if you really want to get green cars and green transportation, and putting aside all gearhead desires, V8s, burnouts, all that good shit that we all love, I think that we can agree that clean air and a healthier environment is something that we should all desire. Putting all that aside, you have to figure out what's going to what the impact is going to be of all these electric cars, and that's only one part of the equation here. It's going to have to be renewable energy sources going hand in hand with the cars themselves. Like, those things have to develop together, or we're just going to move from one energy crisis to the next. Mm-hmm. I think.
Well, yeah, it's you think about, we've had 100 plus years to look back and go, here's what's wrong with the way we get gas out of the ground. We get oil, we refine it, we turn it into gasoline, we put it in the car. This is why that's bad, and here's all the reasons why it's bad. You got CO2 emissions from just the car and the refinery and blah, blah, blah. And same thing with coal, and, you got power plants pushing that stuff out. And even to an extent, nuclear stuff, we've had that around for 40 or 50 years. But when you get to stuff like wind energy, and you get to the like turbine stuff, or like hydroelectric stuff, I mean, we've had hydroelectric for a while, and we know what the ramifications are of that, but there's no easy solution to it. And like, I don't know, I may have mentioned this in the show, but I'm like a big proponent of nuclear stuff because I think that's the least damaging. Mm-hmm. But everything has a negative side effect, and some of the stuff we haven't had as long to think about the ramifications of it. So the people who are like, let's hop into the electric car immediately and try and get, it from this sole source of energy, like wind turbines, there's no way to really, if there's a huge peak in demand, to like kind of soar up demand, and if it cuts out, then you have way too much electricity going into the grid. There's a problem with that just from that infrastructure standpoint, where we're kind of going gung-ho in the direction we should be slightly more cautious about. And then I do think if you really want to talk about saving human lives, the less human drivers you have, the better that is. And we went gung-ho, and I feel like we've kind of recently hit a like, well, hold on, let's slow this down a bit. Here's some, like, level A, level B, level C, level D, and we got to kind of work on the regulation with that, and we're just gonna that slowed down, I think, almost too fast.
To that end, I mean, the big question that we try to think about with our coverage of autonomous vehicles at Jalopnik, because we are, at the end of the day, it is Drive Free or Die. It's a car enthusiast website. It's for people who love to drive. Yeah. The thing that we try to think about is, what does all this autonomous tech mean for people who love to drive? What does it mean for human drivers? And I think that what we've seen over the last year is that autonomous technology is not like the Jesus car that we all thought it would be. At least it isn't yet. The technology is not ready for prime time. It still needs human interaction. It still needs human minders. It still needs humans who understand how it works, whether they're engineering and designing it, or there's someone who can intervene properly if something goes wrong. That's critical when you're talking about these failure rates that the California DMV has recorded for Tesla autonomous cars, or the incident with the Model X that we saw in South Korea recently, the singer actor, whatever he was, whose Model X crashed through his apartment. He didn't know how to stop it. He called it unintended acceleration. But, like 99% of unintended acceleration incidents, it was probably pedal mishap. So, like, human driving still matters. For now, it still matters. Even as cars get more high-tech, it probably matters even more that we have to have human beings who understand how their cars work and and understand how to operate them properly. Or we're just going to find new ways to kill people. Anyway, that's my soapbox rant for the night. I can keep going if you want me to, but that's how I feel about things.
Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, it's it's like everything. Every time you come out with a new technology, people find a way to kill others with it, either through negligence, incompetence, or maliciousness. So I don't think the autonomous car is ever going to be a weapon of malicious killings, but incompetence and ineptness, yeah, people are going to do stupid stuff, and it's going to get people killed because they're not going to understand the limitations.
One thing that I wish car people would do, because this stuff's fascinating, is go back in about 100 years and look at the news clippings from when cars started catching on in cities more and more. Like when cars started becoming really common, more than just like toys of rich people in the countryside. Because the reaction to it was like abject horror. It was like, what the fuck is happening? We have like sidewalks and streets are for people. That's where people walk around, and we're just going to have these things drive around and kill people. And nowadays, like, if you had a kid and they step into the street, what do you tell them? What would you tell your kid if they step in the street, guy?
I was like, get off the street. You got to come.
Get off the street, or look both ways. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be like the streets were for human beings. That was how we walked around. And like eventually the mentality shifted the other way. And it's like that was how things were. And it's kind of crazy to think about it now, because we're so ingrained to think when you're on the road, the car has the right of way. As it should, because it's the 3,500-pound land missile that can kill you. But that's kind of an example of this shift in thinking that I think that is probably gonna happen again in a different way in the coming decades.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was to the way cars and people kind of interact. Going to Europe, going to Italy, driving in cities like Lucca. I was a lot littler than I am now, but I was always kind of fascinated by the fact that you have cars and people, they're in close proximity. I mean, there's sometimes people eating, where cars drive through. Like, the cars just absolutely, like, squeeze by. It's just, like, kind of another means of conveyance. And, it's going to be curious to see, because that's kind of the way they interacted with vehicles. And then we kind of went over here in America, went to this, but we're going to open it up because we have such a big country. We are all so far away from each other. And, as cars became more prevalent, that became even more prevalent, and it kind of like a feedback loop of it. So I'm almost wondering if, we have a generation moving into cities for the first time in a long time, where you're going to be throwing in, self-driving vehicles into their laps here, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years down the line, where those two trends converging. I wonder if we're going to see a difference in civic planning and the reaction people have to people in self-driving cars and in their own self-driven vehicles.
I hope so. And I say this as someone who loves cars, who loves to drive. who is more of a car and a driving advocate than I think most people are, because I have to be. I'm the editor of Jalopnik. Why the fuck else would I be here if not?
Yeah.
But like I would like to see us find ways to design cities so that they're better for walking around, so they're better for biking. I used to live in Washington D.C. I loved riding my bicycle places. I used to love being able to walk places. Like, you know, cars are great. Cars are fun to drive. They're awesome. They're not necessarily the best tool for every single situation, every single way to get around. And I think that, like, I'm hoping that, you know, I think that you see this on Jalopnik too. I read our comments, and I think most of them agrees that, like, car people should realize that, like, you know, cars and public transit or walking or biking are not the enemy, and there's different ways to apply these things. And if we had better public transit, frankly, like, you would open the roads up to people who actually want to drive, and who aren't going to be miserable in traffic, which is unhealthy, which wastes time, which wastes productivity, and which just sucks to be in, no matter what kind of car you're in. Yeah. Like, I think that like, these goals are ones that are going to benefit car enthusiasts in the long run. At least I hope so. I choose to be optimistic about that.
Well, I mean, it can only benefit enthusiasts in the initial phase, because in the initial phase, you're going to get, like you said, people who don't give a crap about driving off the road. And, you know, living in the D.C. area currently, I can tell you there's a lot of people here who are not, when they're in their vehicle, they are not driving it. They just are kind of like on their own weird autopilot in the left lane, driving 10 miles under the speed limit, and they don't give a crap about it, and it ruins everyone else's commute. It causes traffic.
Yeah, DC traffic is the worst. It is the worst thing I've ever seen. Like, if there's ever an argument to be made for autonomous cars, you just get in, dial on your destination, and then, like, fuck off for an hour, it's that. Like, that's not driving. No matter, when I tested, like, supercars living in DC, I never once enjoyed, like, being in traffic in them. Like, you know, there's got to be a better way to do this.
It's just awful. So my fear is, I don't know, do you think we're ever going to reach a point where self-driving cars become illegal on main thoroughfares?
Where self-driving cars become illegal, or you mean, or human driving cars become illegal?
You driving yourself, a human-driven vehicle.
I think if that happened, I think it would be a ways out. I think it's going to be long after you and I are dead. I don't think it's going to be something that happens in our lifetimes. I'm talking about like 70, 80 years from now. At least I hope I'm dead before that happens, because I'd be very sad if it did. You know, I mean, at some point, like, you think that, like, I almost hesitate to bring this up, because it's like, when you think about this, are you hastening the demise of human driving? But it's like, if you want the goal that they have for autonomous cars, which is 0 accidents, 0 fatalities, 0 problems ever, then all cars have to be autonomous. They all have to be connected. They all have to be moving at the same pace, almost like a subway train, except with no human control at all. So, like, if that's the goal they want, then maybe that is what's going to have to happen. Maybe they will have to outlaw human driving. But I certainly hope that's not the case. Like, in my perfect world, it's like, you would have to take a special licensing test to still operate a car yourself. Like, hey, listen, I know how to drive stick. I know how to, like, mitigate oversteer when it happens. I know how to, like, you know, how to stop a car that doesn't have ABS. Like, I deserve to drive a human-driven car. And if I die in it, then, you know, that was on me. Like, I'd like to see that happen, but I don't know. It would be a very sad day for this country, for humanity, when human driving is completely outlawed. But I think a lot of stuff has to happen before we can even, like, start thinking about that.
I do think one of the benefits of living in a country like the United States, where there is such a history of, like, self-made people, and we all think of ourselves as, you know, the reason, you know, you look up the stats, and, you know, not to get too political here, but you look up the stats, and poor people don't really want to tax the really rich people, you know, to the levels they do in other countries, is because they think, one day I'll be rich, you know, I'll be up there, I'll be one of those people, so I don't want my...
America's an aspirational country. We always have been. That is how we think. Yeah.
So we're all about aspiration. We're all about self-made, self-motivated, and we're, you know, well, I can do it better than anyone else did or can or whatever. I almost wonder if this might be the last bastion of self-driving vehicles or human-driven vehicles in the world, because I don't know if there's, this is again looking way far forward, but I could see, United Kingdom, they have road tax, maybe Germany might be the last ones because they're just better than us at pretty much every way. But
yeah, like dense urban places like the big cities in China or Japan. No, and India. You're certainly right. You're absolutely. But then there's the other part of this too that you and I haven't talked about is the urban and rural divide when it comes to autonomous cars. Because when you and I think about how to design cities better, and maybe it'll be better off because there's no fatalities, whatever. We're not accounting for these places that aren't big cities where people depend on cars to get around. Even in Austin, like where I live, this is not a great city for public transit. You pretty much need a car to get here. I have family in-laws that live in Vidor, Texas, and there's no Uber out there. There's no fucking bus. There's no train. There's no subway. And you're telling me what these people are all just going to have autonomous cars one day? They're all just going to have autonomous Ubers on demand? I think that that human-driven cars are going to live on outside of the cities, in America specifically, possibly Germany too, like you said, but in America specifically for a long time, a lot longer than they are in urban areas. And, maybe that's how it should be. I don't know. I'd rather be driving my car on a good country road than stuck in traffic on Mopac. That's for sure.
It's interesting because you just remind me, I was recently broke down in West Virginia on the Lemons rally. And,
nice.
Yeah, that was an Yeah, so we met the local sheriff, or I guess he was the police chief, not a sheriff there. And my partner asked him, well, we got to get to U-Haul, and it's about 10 miles down the road. What's the local taxi company? And, and I looked at him like he's what the hell are you talking about? And the sheriff looked at me and went, taxi, son, you're in West Virginia. We don't got taxis.
We don't got taxis out here. That's funny.
I can't imagine, that's a state where they still hitchhike. I called up a Volvo expert who basically told me, I'm screwed, unless I get a new distributor. And I'm like, well, we got to get to the U-Haul because we got to get a thing. He's like, oh, you just, go out and just one of you just hail down a guy and he'll just drive you 10 miles. It's like, what country and what year is it? It's just weird. And, I can't imagine a state like West Virginia ever really having self-driving cars, because you think about the maintenance that has to happen on a self-driving car, the fact that you have to buy one, and that's not a very rich state, and then you have all that backcountry road driving, and then you have stuff like if you have a car driving in West Virginia, self-driving car, you think speed limit's no issue, so you're going up these mountains at probably high rates of speed, you're probably going to get stuff like brake fade, engine fade, and the car has to account for all that. And I'm not sure if you're ever really going to be able to do that as well as a human-driven car.
Yeah, and that's kind of my issue with a lot of this thinkfluencing that happens about autonomous cars is that all this shit comes out of San Francisco and L.A. and New York, and that's not how most Americans live. Not really. So I think that this autonomy question is going to have to. It's going to have to address people who live in more rural areas at some point, or it's not going to matter,
Yeah, it's such a weird fundamental issue because people go, well, I'm not a car person. I don't give a crap about cars. Blah blah blah. I just want a self-driving car. But then you go and you think about a car touches some mode of internal combustion or electric-driven vehicle touches every facet of the life that you have in this country. I mean, your food gets here on a semi-tractor trailer. You probably got around one way or the other by an internal combustion engine. Not many people commute by walking, unless you live in a big city. So
yeah, you're very fortunate if you can,
Yeah, and even then, you probably can't get your groceries. You probably can't get, because there's food deserts and there's all sorts of weird urban pockets and everything. And these are the issues. You probably commute to work, but you can't go to a grocery store. Or you're spending an arm and a leg and all sorts of it doesn't work for everyone. The people it works for are the people who are the executives for the most part. So I don't know.
And this is what you touch on, everyone hates the word mobility, and it's it's awful and it's buzzwordy and it's terrible and gross. But what it really means is how the fuck are we going to get around in the future? And that is an interesting question. That is something that we have to figure out, as a society, legally, morally, and that's what I think is interesting.
Yeah, I'm just pissed. It's not jetpacks or hoverboards. That's why I'm pissed.
Hey man, we what about those guys who that say oh, we got flying cars coming in, we get 5 years. In 5 years, just 5 more years, we got the flying car. Oh, 10 more years, we got the flying car. Uber just hired a flying car guy. If you ever need an indication that Uber has lost the plot a little bit, they just hired a fucking flying car guy who came from NASA, apparently. NASA was also crackpot enough to waste our taxpayer dollars on a flying car guy. So, I guess that's the next great scam to be in, is being a flying car expert.
I feel like that comes up every 20 years, is flying car. I remember I was in 4th grade, and there was some, I forget the gentleman's name, and I don't really have the internet in front of me at the moment, but he did these weird turbine process cars. Relatively famous, but he for some reason came to my elementary school of all places to talk about flying cars, and he'll be driving a flying car in the future.
Why would he? I'm sorry. Why would he come to an elementary school to talk about flying cars? That's insane.
I don't know if it was because they got all the 4th graders into a room to listen to this guy talk, and I remember being in the back of the class going if this guy is really doing this, why is he here talking to a whole bunch of 4th graders, not talking to rich adults?
Yeah.
Isn't that how this works?
Yeah. And you were a little, I'm assuming as a kid, you were at least somewhat into cars, right? And even then, you're this guy's full of shit, man.
Well, weirdly, I didn't get into cars until I started driving, but I was into tech back then, and I was you have no idea what you're doing. If you're here talking to kids, you can't know anything about flying cars. Just asinine. But it comes up every 20 years, and I feel a hover car. I mean, it's been hovercraft, hover cars, flying cars. Every designer, I think, of a flying car, if they eventually get a prototype up and running, dies in the thing. It's very unfortunate.
They always die in it. Yeah, it's fucked up. But you knew the job was dangerous when you took it. And my big argument is that most people. Look, most people aren't enthusiasts. Most people haven't done track days. Most people can't drive on the ground. And we're adding a third dimension to that equation. That is a recipe for disaster. That is just going to be people flying into buildings every day, Yeah, it's bad. It's going to be a bad look for humanity.
Yeah. It's at a certain point in the back of my head, I go, okay, if you did a transportation from the ground up that was autonomous, it was 3-dimensional, there was never any need for any human input, flying vehicle, it makes sense on a very fundamental level of you don't need people to be good drivers because it's all going to be self-driven, blah, blah, blah. But then on the same aspect of that, if I ever see a self-driving tram or any sort of self-driving vehicle for the most part where there's a chance it could collide with something, I still don't get into it, and I would be hard. You'd have to give me a gunpoint to go on to. Here's a vehicle you're going to get into. I think they're doing this in Dubai, right? It's a self-driving quadcopter, and no need for human input. We're just going to stick you in there, and it's going to self-fly you across the city. No, you'd have to give me a fucking gunpoint. Even then, I might try and fight you because that just seems like a death trap,
I will tell you that it's unnerving just in self-driving cars. My first experience with one was about a year ago. We had a Tesla with an earlier version of autopilot in Detroit, and I put it in its mode and took my hands off the steering wheel and my feet off the pedals, and I was what the fuck? Oh my god, it works! It absolutely worked. 100%. But it was the most unnerving, weirdest thing I've ever felt, and I never was 100% comfortable in it. Maybe my kids will be someday, but I will never be used to this. I'm just always gonna they'll be Grandpa, you don't need to keep your hands hovering over the steering wheel and the pedals. I'm fuck you, I don't trust this machine. Damn you, machine, I'm ready for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be me someday. So yeah, it is a weird thing to get used to, Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we all grew up having seen Terminator, so we know the machines are coming for us,
Yeah, I mean, everyone thinks Asimo is cute, Honda's Asimo, but then until he's bathing in your blood and punting your wife's head across the room like a soccer ball, then he's not so fucking cute, is he?
Mm-hmm. Well, random aside on that, I was watching something or listening to some futurist talk about how if machines ever take over, it won't be them looking like, human cyborgs with like the jaw and everything, looking super intimidating. It's going to be super cute stuff killing us. And
oh yeah,
they're gonna. Well, what's the human's weakness? Well, they really like cute things. Well, that's how we'll get into everyone's house, and then we'll just murder them. Like that's how.
It'll be your Roomba coming after you, just killing you in your sleep. That'll be the most effective way to do it.
Not Charlie. I love Charlie.
Not Charlie. No, you betrayed me. Anyway, I'm tired of talking about the future because a lot of it is depressing. Do you have other car stuff you want to talk about, or anything else? Or
I know. I think in the email you said you're super excited to talk about these self-driving cars, and now you're it only takes about an hour out of you before you're.
I was well. That we started talking. We started talking about how exciting it could be, and then we were like, "Oh, this is actually horrible. Never mind. Yeah. Fuck it." So that's where we're at now.
Well, I think that's pretty much the general feeling in the United States at the moment. Like, it's great. It kind of sucks.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to bring you down as far as possible at this point. Let me see. I got my what? I can't speak. What the heck is happening with my tongue today? So here's an interesting one. I thought about this, and here's just a random quick aside. If your bosses, if Matt Hardigree came to you and said, we need to compete with these roadkill guys, and I need you to make a kind of similar but slightly different version of that, and I need you to get 2 hosts from your writing pool, who would you use?
One, Hardigree's not my boss anymore. He does like partnerships and other things these days. He still works with us, but I call my own shots. Some people forget sometimes, but no. But if we came to, if we did come to me and say that, and I'm going to preface this by saying that like everything on the internet is trash and terrible except Roadkill. Those guys are all right. They're wonderful. They are doing God's work every day. Like Roadkill is all right in my book. However, if I wanted to, I could destroy them, and therefore they exist because I allow them to exist. Now, is that an official throwing down of the gauntlet? Maybe it is playfully. I don't know. But what I would do is I would get Jason Torchinsky and David Tracy on a show together and just have like this one older crazy guy and this one younger, slightly more meticulous but also crazy guy, like just like do insane car projects together. And just see what they come up with. And I think the results will be bonkers.
I would love to see the 2 of them build a car.
Yeah, that's something I would love to see too. Because like of the 2, it would be them who would do it. With Jason, like I've asked him before. I'm like, why were you not an engineer? He's like, I did art, I did that other stuff. But like he could have been. He easily could have been because he thinks like an engineer and he's smart and he's very mechanically minded and he fixes all of his cars. And like I think if you put like him with David together, like the results they would come up with would be astounding and also terrifying, frankly. I mean, like just deeply chill you to your bones, terrifying.
Yeah, those moments don't come quite across on the in the article somehow. I don't know why. Maybe they were edited out because they terrified you. Like, just remove them so we don't scare away the readers. So I know you said you're sick of the future, but what are you excited about driving coming up?
Oh man, I had kind of a shitty driving year in 2016. I mean, like we're talking about again, like running Jalopnik, like doesn't leave me a lot of time for like testing press cars and like writing stuff. So there's a few things I want to drive. The Alfa Giulia, I haven't been in that yet. I really want to drive that. The BMW M2, I really want to drive that because Roselli and Balaban gave it a bad review, and I'm like, you two are trash people. There's no way this car is bad. And like I'm a bit of a BMW fan, not as much with their newer stuff, like which is decent, but like I like the older cars a lot. I own one, but like I love the 2 Series. It's one of my favorite modern cars. Full stop. Like the M2 has to be good, so I want to prove those idiots wrong in that. McLaren has a new car coming out soon. We believe it's called the 720S. I'm really eager to try that. I'm not a big supercar guy, but McLaren makes amazing stuff. Let's see what else. I'm curious about a Lincoln Continental. I've heard that's good. Like I don't think it actually is good, but I'd give it a try. It's we had I don't know. I think that we had a big run for like 3 or 4 years where all these new performance cars came out. Like the Corvette Stingray, the new Miata, the new Mustang, the new Camaro, and we're kind of seeing it slow down a bit. Like here, like there was this glut of new car releases. Now they're being updated. Now they're in their mid-cycle refreshes. They're being phased out or whatever. But like, there's not a whole lot of like really new stuff on the horizon, like brand new stuff that I'm excited about. Besides the ones I mentioned, obviously. I had a Ford Focus RS last year briefly too, for like a day I had. I really like that car a lot. And I really want to drive one a little bit, get a little bit more seat time in it. And I've been in kind of a weird truck mood lately too. Like I really want I don't know, it just happens, you know. I'm a Texan, like give it to me. Yeah, like I really want to try the Tacoma TRD Pro off-road and like take that to an off-roading park that's near Austin. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So that's kind of what's on my agenda. Oh, and the new Acura NSX. I'm really curious about that thing because Bark M, who's one of our contributors, gave that a good review, and he is not a guy to, fluff something up if it's not worthy. He's a very honest auto journalist, and if he says it's good, then it's damn good, and I really want to try it. So it's been nice to see Honda kind of like get its mojo back a little bit lately in terms of like the quality of its products and how fun they are to drive. We're kind of seeing a return to the Hondas like you and I grew up with that were like these like affordable, well-built, high-tech for their time, but like fun cars. And that's been kind of cool to see.
Mm-hmm. I'm still waiting for a mid-engine car for the people to come back out from Honda. Back into it. All right. Slight technical difficulty. Yep. So, Honda. I've never been a huge fan of Honda personally, but I'm kind of excited to see them come back to the enthusiast field because I know for a while they were trying to button up the hood after the Fast and Furious stuff came out, and they're kind of trying to shake that image, and now they're kind of just like, you know what, we make fun cars, to hell with it, you know. So.
Yeah, and I think it's a very engineering-driven company, and they're at their best when they think that way. And both in terms of how like the cars are built and how fun to drive they are and the features they have. Like I've seen some really impressive stuff from them lately too. So that's good to see. Before you cut out, you were saying that like you really miss like affordable mid-engine cars, and like I am right there with you, man. Because nobody does that. Like Porsche 914, Toyota MR2 being like the most obvious one, Fiat X19, like nobody does that shit anymore. And it makes sense. It's like the sports car market is not very good right now. People aren't really buying sports cars. They're buying SUVs and crossovers and trucks. And that is, making a dedicated architecture that just for that one car, that's hard to justify. I think like probably the most affordable mid-engine car you can buy these days, I think, is maybe like a base Boxster, and that's like 65 grand. Yeah. So it's not especially affordable. So like I'd love to see that segment return. I don't think it ever will, barring some sort of crazy cataclysmic event in which those things become cool and in fashion again. I don't know.
Well, that brings me to a random thought I had. I said this before, and I'm not sure if I've ever said it on podcast, but I think the one thing Toyota and Subaru screwed up on is when they decided they were going to build a introductory sports car with a boxer engine for the people, and they made it front-engined, rear-wheel drive. They kind of goofed up. If they would have put that motor in the middle, I get why they did it because packaging and everything, but you take that motor, you put it in the middle. It's a boxer motor, so I'm sure packaging that would probably be difficult as hell, but you would have the only mid-engine car for under $60,000, that's a whole different marketplace than you have a car that competes with the Mustang but costs the same but doesn't put out as much horsepower, and you wonder why your sales suffer.
I think you have a point. I also think that I'm not sure how much the mid-engine architecture would have been a selling point extra, because it would have been to like the dedicated enthusiasts, but maybe not like your more mainstream buyers who could like stumble onto that or just like want kind of a sportier car and find that. I think where you and I would agree is like their big mistake was not adding more power to that car. Yes. Which is a shame because I actually really love the BRZ in the 86. I love it as is. I think it's got plenty of power as it is. I'm a big advocate for that car. From a sales standpoint, like that was what everyone expected. They were always expecting the STI version or whatever, the one that had, 250, 300 horses, and I think that would have done a lot for them in terms of hype, in terms of excitement around the car, would have done a lot for sales, and it's kind of a bummer that never happened because like it would would have done well. That was a real opportunity there. It just, never materialized, unfortunately.
Well, I feel they made the mistake in they either needed to have more power in it from the get-go, or they needed to make it about $4,000 or $5,000 cheaper from the get-go. Because you saying front engine rear-wheel drive car $20,000, I go, okay, so it's a base Mustang or a Camaro or even a Challenger. You know, you can get a front engine rear-wheel drive car for fairly cheap nowadays when the BRZ came out. If you would have said front engine rear-wheel drive car $15,000, you would have had my attention. You know, like, oh.
Yeah, that's hard to do these days, though. I mean, when you talk about safety standards, you have to meet, you know, the sales that they're projecting. You know, like you have all the enthusiasts wonder, like, why isn't there like a cheap $15,000 pickup truck? It's like development costs, safety standards, you know, breaking even, actually making money. Like it's hard to do that stuff. And like I get the economic realities. Like there's a reason now that the average new car costs $34,000. Like it is what it is. So like, yeah, in our perfect world, like the BRZ or the FRS would be a hell of a lot cheaper. But I like that car enough to wager that like it's a great value for what it is. And I've thought about buying one before myself. And like if I did, it'd be one of those cars that like I kept forever and just kind of like passed on to my kids one day. Like, listen, you know, you know, you can have a pod car that drives you everywhere. You can learn to drive yourself in this. And it's naturally aspirated, so it might last forever. On the other hand, it's a Subaru, so it probably won't.
Yeah, it probably end up leaking oil just all over the ground. Like,
yeah, it'll immediately when it hits at 100,000 miles, it will grenade itself, just like, you know, everyone else's Subaru has done.
Mm-hmm. Subaru for life, just not yours.
Well, define life, right? Yeah.
They mean the dog's life. You know, maybe you get 10 years out of it. That's why they're, you know, that's why they claim to be, you know, dog people, because like, oh, we built it for the dog's life. That's what.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about this too. So changing gears again. So you go to, I don't know, do you go to a lot of events now since you're editor-in-chief?
Like car, like what kind of events do you mean?
I'm talking about like the Detroit Auto Show, New York Auto Show, stuff like that.
Yeah, I do most of those because I have to go do FaceTime with manufacturers, and because I hate myself, I go to the events. I try and do a couple a year. I mean, I like them. We don't really do the European ones as much, but like I'll do Detroit and then New York and LA. Most cases because I like going to those cities in general and like seeing people and hanging out and doing car stuff there. But I mean, like the last few years, we've definitely seen a shift away from the big auto shows in terms of news, in terms of products that are getting revealed there. Like they're not, like automakers aren't waiting for auto shows to roll around to roll out new cars and do big reveals and do concept reveals. Like they do them throughout the year. They do them at special events now. So like this last Detroit Auto Show was kind of shitty when it came to news. Like it was like the big debut there was the new Toyota Camry, and like it's, you know, the only way that car's ever going to be interesting is if they mounted buzz saws on the front of it, like the Speed Racer car used to have. Like, you know, it's you just don't see as much big draws out of auto shows like you used to. I think the internet's had a lot to do with that too.
Yeah, it's again, I think it's you have this tech people, you know, you just announce stuff when you have it, because they got away from like E3 and stuff years ago, whereas now, you know, you have these people kind of filtering into the automotive space, you know, with your Teslas, your, I guess, Faraday Future, if they ever, I guess they count as a tech company, who knows. Vaporware is a thing, and that's an auto term and a tech term, but when you go to these shows, you know, you are probably one of the biggest news outlets at the show, if not the biggest one, depending on what event it is. Like, do you think that changes the way that you get treated? And like, do you find yourself kind of more, I don't know, like how is it going to an event for the editor-in-chief of Jalopnik? How is that?
I mean, we I'll be honest, like we have really good, strong relationships with some automakers. We have either weak or non-existent relationships with other ones. I'm not going to name names here because that's something that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But like, it comes down to like some people really understand and get what we do, which is like we're fun and we are honest and we are irreverent and we enjoy the shit we do. And we tell jokes and, you know, have a good time doing it. And then some really don't understand it. And so it just kind of depends on who's who. I mean, that's basics of journalism. That's like developing relationships with your sources and the people that you have to work with for stories. It's like sometimes you're going to be on the naughty list and sometimes you're going to be on the nice list. I am fortunate in that I work for a company that doesn't really believe in access journalism. And so, like, if I need to tell someone to go fuck themselves, I can tell them to go fuck themselves. And that'll be that. Like, we're also, as arrogant as this may sound, like big enough now that I can do that. Like, you know, if automaker X, like, well, we don't want to, you know, deal with you guys anymore because we didn't like this one word in your headline, which has happened before. I was like, fine, we'll just write about your competitors instead. I remember getting cornered at one auto show, like the minute I arrived, by an PR rep from one automaker who will remain nameless, and he was like, you know, you guys made fun of the price increase on this one car, and we really didn't like that, and that's why you're not going to get to drive our supercar this year. That was really mean of you to do that. And I was like, dude, I haven't even had my coffee yet. Like, you just need to, you know, like, just get over it. I'm like, I'm sorry your car got more expensive, but like, that's not on me, man, you know? So that's kind of what we deal with here, but that's how it goes, you know? I'd rather be that than be like the motor trend, you know, where you're just like sucking dick all day long. Pardon my French. That was especially crass, but like, you know, where you're just like totally embedded, totally dependent on access, and you're like a glorified PR arm for an automaker. Like, that's not why any of us want to do what we do. Yeah. I don't think it's what our readers want either.
No, I mean, no one wants to read about how great everything is because that's not entertaining. Now, you don't want to be false about something, but you want to, you know, find a fault and make a story out of it, and that's why we enjoy reading it. That's why Top Gear was so great, is because when they fell down and did stupid shit, that's what we laughed at. Yeah, we like the cars, but we like them too. But
yeah.
To the automotive point, though, I have a question that how do you feel about the business cards? Because I'm not sure how I feel about the business cards.
Having business cards?
No, I mean, like, when you go there and it's just like this, like, flurry of like everyone exchanging business cards. Like,
they're useful. I mean, I collect them and I email everybody at the end of the day, like, hey, it was really nice meeting you today. Here's my info. Let's talk soon. Like, it's helpful. Like, you should do it. You know, so
I do it. It just, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I have a weird, like, because I never had to use them before getting into this space. It was always just kind of like seemed irrelevant to me in the other sectors I've worked in, where now it's like, oh, business card. I'm like, this feels weird somehow. I don't know. But it never felt unnatural to you. You just find them completely at 100%. Let me change. So, like, when I met Alex Roy at the New York Auto Show, we had a nice, lovely conversation. At the end of it, he's like, here's my business card, thanks. Where there were some other people who was like, oh, you're this guy? Here's my business card, bye. Like, well, we didn't have a conversation, and it just, like, why am I just going to email you if we didn't even bother to talk? Like, that's the part that kind of weirds me out about it. I don't know. Am I just weird? Is that what you're telling me?
I don't know about Alex. I mean, the thing is with Alex, what you got to realize is that he's a very prolific serial killer, and if he was in kind of a rush he was off to murder someone or bury someone's body somewhere. So like, I would not take that personally. It was just because he was too busy murdering somebody.
Alex was very nice. It was other people and some other manufacturers.
Oh, he was. Well, he must not have been murdering someone that day. That's fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I love Alex. I'm just kidding. I don't think he's a serial killer. Yeah, no, I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. And like this at the end of the day, auto shows are trade shows. Like it's a trade show for the industry, and there's a lot of chaos going on. And like, sometimes I meet people I hit it off with, I talk to for a while, and then some people I'm just like, hey, I'm busy. Here's my card, blah, blah, blah. Like, and I've done the same to people. It's like, you know, you're there, you're working, like, on some capacity. Sometimes you have time to chat with people, and sometimes you got other stuff you got to attend to. It's just kind of life sometimes, you know?
Yeah. So what you're telling me is quit being weird. So
I wouldn't think too much into it. Coming from one guy who thinks too much into things to another, I wouldn't think too much into it.
All right. Good, glad to hear. All right, I'll stop. I'll attempt to stop thinking about that. So we're over time. I don't want to keep you too late. I know you have a bit.
No, not at all. I thoroughly enjoy this. I'm so happy to be back.
All right. So we'll kind of talk about. Last time we spoke, we talked about the manifesto and how, you know, this is the guiding principle that like you were going to kind of try and work on. I know we touched on this a little bit earlier. But is there anything that's kind of changed since then that you kind of want to add into it or maybe take out of it?
No, I mean I haven't revisited that in a while. Because a lot of what I wanted to do, like I think with any job, when you step into a leadership role, there's like a gap between what you think you can do and what you can actually do, and that gap there's a lot of that was in flux over the last year with all the changes that happened with our parent company. But in spite of that, I think that we've largely succeeded, which is making Jalopnik a honest and fun and irreverent source of car news and opinion that covers a lot of things besides just cars, and also like is looking to the future and wondering what that means for human drivers. And that's what we do every day. And I think we've lived up to that. I don't think we've strayed from that at all. At least I don't think we have.
All right, and then to kind of trail off of that, has there been a story or something that you've absolutely wanted to do, but logistically you just haven't been able to figure out how to make it happen?
Actually, yes, there's several, but I'm not going to talk about them because they're going to happen eventually. And what I will tell you is that they are big and awesome and crazy, and it's just like figure out the logistics of doing them has been the tough thing to figure out. Like we're talking like big crazy video, possibly even television projects. So like stay tuned, because like we have big shit in the works. Is the only thing I'll say about that. It's just a question of can we execute it right and how soon.
Mm-hmm. So to that point too, there's been kind of a I don't know if I tried to put this in the prepared questions. I don't know if I did. There's kind of been like a lot of the other more traditional media is kind of going towards more video review stuff. You get Motor Trend doing what they do. Rotor Track, I see like a lot of their stuff coming out. And, do you think that, for lack of a better term, like print or just written automotive journalism has a life expectancy, or do you think this is something that is, it's not going to really change that much between now and like 5 years from now, which is an eternity on the internet? So.
I think all of us here are writers first. And that plays to our strengths, frankly. And none of us plan on phasing out doing writing in our work. But I think all of us want to integrate video into our content a lot more. When we did end of year reviews for our staff, like everybody, to a man and a woman, said to me, I want to be on video more in 2017. So like that's my goal, is to get my staff to do more video aspects of their stories, of the cars they drive, of the stuff they review, the stuff they test drive, the crazy adventures they go on. Like, we want more video of everything. Whether it's like the main feature or it's like something that complements that. So like I don't think print has an expiration date, but I think that we all want to be doing more video, and we're going to be soon. In fact, I'll let you break some news on the podcast if you want.
Yeah, we're always about that. It's hour 17, so no one's listening at this point anyway.
I haven't. I don't know when you'll get this online. I haven't announced this yet. I probably will on Twitter tomorrow after I've run a few other checks I have to do. We posted a job opening a few months back for our reviews editor job, who's like our chief car tester and video person. Our primary like do fun shit in cars officer. And today we finally closed the deal on who that's going to be. Do you want to know who it is?
Well, I'm very excited to find out who it is.
It's actually our very own Andrew Collins, our truck guy, is being promoted to this role. So you'll be seeing him doing a lot more video and a lot more car reviews in 2017. And we are absolutely thrilled to have him be doing that, because he is 100% the man for the job and came in with a bunch of ideas and has largely been doing the job last few months. But you'll be seeing a lot more from him this year. So round of applause for Andrew. It's very deserved, and he's going to kick ass at it this year. Yeah. So
we've had him on the show. He's absolutely fantastic. I can't think of a better person for it.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that. We couldn't either. He's great, and I think that we want to be doing more. We still on the subject of video. We want to be doing more of it. Like I want a video channel on Jalopnik that like rivals Motor Trend and Petrolicious and all of our other competitors and friends in this space. Like there's no reason that Jalopnik shouldn't have a badass video operation. No reason, especially now that we are owned by Univision, which is a TV company at the end of the day. And like I will let you draw your own conclusions on what that means for our future. But like that's the goal we have this year, and I'm hoping that my staff will make that happen. I think they will.
That is, as a fan of the site, that is the most exciting news I could possibly hear from that. I'm like and formulating. I'm sure when this comes out, there's going to be some people in the comment section making some wonderful predictions, which I might join them. I'm very excited. I kind of want to go from all this wonderful prepared stuff and leave on that happy note and go into some of the more goofy stuff here. And one of the segments I warned you about before.
I'm ready. I'm so ready for this. Bring it on.
So the way I always prepare the guests for this is I say, have you seen Inside the Actor's Studio?
Yes, I have.
So he has 10 questions he always likes to ask the guests. I've tried to tailor a similar set of questions for the automotive world. So if you've seen that, you kind of know what to expect coming into here. So, we're trying to become more of the podcast of record. So this is our way of doing that. So let's start with, what is your favorite car?
What is my favorite car? Mm-hmm. I think when they tell you on a test, it's like the first answer that springs to mind is the right one. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the Citroen SM. And I drove Alex Roy's once, and I was like, this is the most fucking wonderful, batshit insane, perfect, amazing car I've ever driven. It's so great. It's so luxurious. It's got a Maserati engine, this like slide lock manual gearbox. That's like, it looks insane. Like nothing has ever looked like that car before or since. What I say with the SM, I probably use the original, so sue me, but is the Daft Punk video for One More Time, those like blue aliens on the planet, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like on that planet everyone drives a Citroen SM. It's the only car that they make. That's why I love that car.
It is a weird French alien car. I agree 100% with that.
Franco-Italian. It's got a Maserati engine in it. It's like when you bought it new back in the day. And as I understand it, when it went on sale in the 70s, it was the most expensive car you could buy in America. You needed to get your engine serviced at your Maserati dealer and everything else serviced at your Citroen dealer. Needless to say, nobody in America had any time for that whatsoever. So like I love that because it was just so bonkers, man. Perfectly bonkers and weird.
Which is what we all want in a car, honestly.
Right, yeah. All of us, yes. Every car buyer out there, they want madness and insane repair costs.
Mm-hmm. That's why it was the best-selling car on the planet when it came out.
Replaced by today's best-selling car, the Mazda RX-8.
Yeah. I think the RX-7 is slightly less reliable, so I think that's why people like that.
Yeah.
That's why those cars have never had an engine swapped out of them, ever.
Not once, not ever.
All right, what is your least favorite car?
Least favorite car? Well, my now wife, when we started dating, she had a Nissan Sentra with a CVT. We're dating, like, I would drive it off and on for various reasons. I fucking loathed that car. Like, it was just like, such a deplorable, depressing shit box of a car with a horrible transmission. So I would say, like, the Sentra specifically, or really any Nissan with a CVT, was just like some real bullshit that's been foisted on the car buying public. Like, enthusiasts hate them. When you look at studies, like, car buying normal people fucking hate CVTs too, but Nissan keeps making them, so, because they like hate people. So
I'm just picturing like a mad Japanese Nissan scientist, like, yes, good, put the CVT in, they will loathe it. It's payback for Hiroshima. That's the way they're getting. Maybe that's the way the Japanese are getting back with us with CVTs.
There you go.
It almost makes too much sense. Almost. All right. So, what turns you on creatively, emotionally, or spiritually?
Honestly, free time and like just having a little bit of like time to myself and time to think and drive my car and just be left alone a little bit. That does a lot for me. That seldom happens these days, but I wish I had a little bit more of it.
Yeah, you have to have time to decompress to let the creative juices flow.
Yeah. I read a lot of fiction outside of work. I don't read nonfiction books because I'm a reporter. Like I deal in facts and truth, hopefully, all day long. So I read a lot of fiction, and that kind of helps take my mind off of things. But a little bit more free time would be nice.
Mm-hmm. what modification trend turns you off? So like donk, stance, brodozer, stuff like that.
Frankly, I was going to say nothing because I try to be open-minded about car culture and what people enjoy driving and try to celebrate everything. Like you can, I think that at Jalopnik, it's like you can sort of chide people and kid them a little bit about the stuff they're into, but like we don't try to be mean or condescending or assholeish. That's what someone's thing is. Having said that, the whole rolling coal thing with trucks really gets on my fucking nerves. Like I just think it's wasteful and gross and terrible and stupid, and it just like it's always like white dudes with little dicks who have them. I see a lot. It's like you're not impressing anyone with that. No. Yeah, so like I would say coal rolling. That just like okay, dude, like you're not an enthusiast. You're just an asshole.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That is, there's nothing to that trend besides being an asshole. Cause
yeah, there's nothing there. There's nothing aesthetic. There's nothing cultural. There's nothing like performance oriented. It's just like, coal stacks. I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me.
All right, now same question reverse. What modification trend turns you on? Like which one is you see it and you like it?
I would never do this to any of my cars in a million years, but like I respect the people that do the stance thing because it's so different, and they're so enthusiastic about it, and it's like it's such a middle finger to like traditionalists and like purists, and it's just kind of its own great culture. Like if you stance your car and you live the stance life and you're scraping along and going to H2O. Ducking potholes, like, and you did all that stuff yourself. Like, you're all right in my book, man. Those people are okay. I think I wouldn't do it myself. It's not my personal thing, but I respect that car culture. I really do.
Impressed and a little, I don't know. Thank you for doing it, so I don't have to.
Yeah, I would say so because it's not something like I'm not going to go out to my E30 in my driveway and be like, oh, man, I got to stance this motherfucker so hard. Like, that's just not a thing I would do.
Right. What car do you dread being stuck behind at a red light?
I feel like whenever I want to go hoon my car on like good back roads in Austin, I'm always stuck behind like a RAV4 or a Nissan Rogue that's going like 10 under the speed limit. And my car's a 325e. It's like not the fast E30 at all, but like if I can blitz you in that car, then you're driving way too damn slow. So like any really boring crossover, I think is just kind of something that I just like. I have to look at that thing at a stoplight or on a back road, and I'm stuck behind it. Like whatever.
That is actually the correct answer. This is the only section that has the correct answer.
Nice.
What automotive sound or noise do you love?
I used to love the way the Formula One engines sounded when they were running the naturally aspirated V8s. I was talking to Alanis about that. Alanis King, our weekend editor, and I don't think that she ever went to an F1 race in Austin when they still were running the NA V8 cars, because now the turbo V6 cars sound like my Mini Cooper. They just kind of burble along, and it's like, ooh, you can like sit there right next to the racetrack talking to someone like, oh, how's your mom doing? Blah, 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 and it used to be this fucking ear-splitting wail that you needed earplugs to be there, and you could feel the sound in your sternum. Like, I will never forget how that sounds. So, like, that's, maybe that's not even the best sounding era of F1 cars. It probably isn't, but, like, it's the one that, like, I remember when I first started really getting into this, when I first came back to America, and I'll never forget what that wail sounds like and how special that was.
What automotive sound or noise do you hate?
So my wife and I, we're on our second Mini Cooper because we're idiots. Our first one, we had an '08, and it was a fucking nightmare of a car. We bought a 15 Cooper S last year and a half ago, and it's been great. It's been dead reliable, believe it or not. Like, the car's been wonderful. We actually really like it a lot. But the first one, it had this, it was the Peugeot PSA, the PSA Peugeot Citroën engine. It was a 1.6 liter turbo 4. I'm trying to think of how to describe this like orally, but it had this kind of rattle to this low pitched burble at the same time with a high pitched rattle. And every time I turned that car on, I was like, what is going to break next? And how much is it going to cost me? Because for a while I was paying like $1,200 a month in repairs. I try to fix shit myself, like on cars, as best I can. I fixed the E30, okay, but like a newer Mini Cooper, like most of the fixes proved too complicated for me. But like I have PTSD from that engine. Like when I turn it on, like when I get a loaner car from the dealer or something, or I hear it on the road, whatever, like, and I hear that old 1.6 liter Peugeot Citroen engine, I'm like, fuck, like I'm about to just better check my bank account because it's about to get destroyed again by the car. So yeah, that's my turnoff, is that sound.
What automotive based profession would you like to try other than your own?
I don't think I ever would have been good at this. I like drawing a little bit. I grew up doodling and doing some art. I would have loved to have been a car designer. That would have been a cool job. If I was like, assuming I was good at art, and if I could have any job in the car industry, I'd be a designer. I think that'd be really, like, just a really interesting, cool, neat profession to have. And, to be able to see your work go from sketch to something that's sitting on dealer lots in the middle of nowhere in America, that must be a really special feeling.
I think that's the correct answer. Another section has the correct answer. That's it.
It's probably an obvious answer, but like that's how I feel. If I could do anything, I'd do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, what is, and I think you have a unique perspective on this, what is the one thing in the automotive sector you would not want to do job-wise?
I wouldn't want to be the head of the UAW. I think that's a hard job. And I'm a pro-union guy. My company is a union company now, so solidarity. But those guys they definitely have an uphill battle, and they fucked up a lot over the last few decades. Let's not mince words there at all. But I think that working for the UAW, ensuring good union benefits and work in the decades to come, that's got to be a tough gig right now, I would assume. That or no. I have a better answer for you, Ike. You know what job I would not want to do, but simultaneously would love to do? I would love to do PR for Mitsubishi North America. I would never leave my job for PR because I'm as you can tell, I'm way too broken inside and dysfunctional and awful to work in public relations. But if I did for any car company, it would be Mitsubishi, because you did that for a year, you'd have the material for the best fucking book ever, I think. Just what a fucked company that must be at this point is Mitsubishi of America. I don't know. That's the job I would not want to have, and simultaneously I'm so morbidly curious I'd be willing to do it to find out.
So here's a weird thing. I had her on not too long ago.
Who did you have?
It's Francine Hardesty, I believe was her name.
Now I feel bad. She was probably very nice, right?
She was absolutely delightful, but I actually had her on. I booked it I book out weeks in advance. I had her on the day the Nissan Mitsubishi merger was announced. Wow. That was the most awkward interview ever, because it's I can't talk about any of this because it's still up in the air. It was announced, no details are formed, so we can talk about anything, but I literally can't say the word Nissan. This is gonna be weird. So we still don't know what's gonna happen there. We still don't. That's that with Mitsubishi North America specifically, because they're figuring out all the other markets, and it's what about in the US? No, I've known people who have worked or have worked at Mitsubishi. All of them are lovely and wonderful, dedicated people. It's a good team, but they're just totally bent over by the situation they're in, by the products they get, by the dealer network they have. It's a rough gig. I applaud anyone who does that. They're just they're out there fighting the good fight, man. Someone has to. You know who? Just random aside. You know who I feel really bad for? I used to live in Normal, Illinois, which is where they had the factory. For Mitsubishi. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There is, if you want fantastic sushi, you go to Normal, Illinois, because all the heads, when they first opened up the factory, brought over some of their favorite, cooks and chefs and preparers, and they opened up Japanese restaurants right in and around the plant. So interesting. So I haven't heard about that, but I have heard the same is true in a bunch of towns in Ohio from Honda for the exact same reason. So that must be a thing. It's just evidently all of these towns where the Japanese automakers ended up, the execs were just fuck this, we're bringing over our own sushi chefs. So that's where a surprisingly good place to find sushi is that. I wonder what they're going to do now that the plant shut down.
Yeah, like I guess there's less of a market in Normal, Illinois now for great sushi than there was a few years ago. So Godspeed to those guys.
Yeah, that small college town, nothing else to do. Yeah, no, you're screwed. No, yeah. So I don't think we had this question last time. I'm pretty sure you'd remember if I asked you from last time. Did I ask you what the hardest food to eat while driving was last time?
No, I don't think you did. But you sent me that question in email, and I've thought about it, and I think I have the best possible answer. Are you ready for it?
I think so. Yes, let's go.
So I think it's ice cream. And I'm not talking about a milkshake or whatever. I'm talking about actual, honest to God, like a cone or a dish of ice cream. And I thought of this because, like, I remember around about 10 years ago, like, me and some friends went from Austin to Corpus Christi in Texas, like, on the beach. We were driving to the beach, like, hang out on the weekend and, like, drink and do drugs and go chill out. And so we're driving down there, and like we stopped by a Dairy Queen, and like everyone orders ice cream. I was like, man, I want a fucking banana sundae is what I want, like a banana split. Like this is back when I could eat a banana split and not like feel bad about dying of the diabetes someday. Yeah. So I ordered a banana split, and I was driving my old WRX, so like cover the stick shift, and everyone orders milkshakes with me. I'm like, no, we got to get in the road, man. Like we don't have time for you to eat your banana split. So like I'm trying to like shift gears and drive on like these back roads and eat a banana split at the same time. And it was nigh on impossible. It's like pizza, burger, French fries, sandwich, whatever. You could eat that stuff driving. A banana split, that's harder to do, my friend. Especially with a manual transmission car. Mm-hmm.
Typically, this section turns into stupid shit Ike's done in cars. Like, people give me food that it's impossible to eat in a car, and I inform them that I have eaten it in the car. I'm glad to see the opposite happen this time. A banana split specifically might be the hardest type of ice cream to eat in a vehicle. And
if there's a harder one out there, I don't know what it is, frankly, unless you're getting into stuff like walnuts or something that you have to like break open physically, or a grapefruit,
And Dairy Queen banana split in particular, because there's something about when you spill Dairy Queen ice cream on any sort of automotive plastic, it turns into like weaponized goo.
Yeah, it stains it and gets all sticky and gross forever, because that's just like not really even ice cream. It's like this chemical based stuff that's made in like Taiwan and then shipped over here to America's Dairy Queen locations.
Yeah. We shipped it in from Mexico. It has a whole bunch of toxins in it, but
yeah,
it's addicting. You'll like it.
That'll be the one good thing to happen from the border walls. We kill off the Dairy Queen chemical supply.
How am I supposed to get my Dairy Queen high then?
Right.
Yeah. And your Dairy Queens down there are a little different in Texas than the rest of the country too, which is weird to me.
So I'm told. I think they're from Texas originally, aren't they? Or am I thinking of Whataburger? I don't know.
Well, I think both are. Yeah.
I think both are.
Yeah. All right. So now that we've exited that, we're going to go ahead and cool down here with a little bit of questions from the audience. So I hope you're prepared for this. So Monkey Puzzle wants to know what's up with the first two names. What are you hiding? Obviously, are you two kids in a trench coat? I think this gets back to our clone conversation before. Are you two kids in a trench coat, Patrick George?
I'm happy. I want to say that like I'm a proud two kids in a trench coat American. I've never tried to hide that. That's who I am inside. And I'm not going to shy away from that fact. So the answer is 100% yes. And I'm happy for that.
Breaking news here first. Two breaking things here. Yeah, Crown Molly asked pretty much the same questions, and I think Monkey Puzzle asked a better name. Just saying. Let's see here. I've got to go through these things and read while talking, which is a weird skill that I developed, and right now I'm going cross-eyed for some reason. So, a few weeks ago, this is from Umbro Turo. I can't figure out how to pronounce that.
Oh yeah, Rambaturo. Yeah, he did a great story for us last year about the Anime X driver and what it means about autonomous cars. I should have. I feel bad for him because I wanted to include that in our roundup of best stories from 2016 because I really loved that story and how well it did. So that guy's okay in my book.
I actually was going to bring that up when we talked about the autonomous cars earlier, but I went, treaded water. It was a great article. Absolutely.
That's the job I want in the future is the guy who drives a Lotus 7 and takes down the autonomous cars and they go rogue. I'll do that. That's fine.
I want to do it too, but I want to do it in my Fiesta just for hilarity's sake.
Yeah.
He says, I noticed a few Jalopnik authors that add their personal cars to their signature boxes, and I thought that was such a great little thing to include. So what's the status of your BMW? Is it just the way you like it? Is it modified? Do you have any plans for it?
Oh, yes. I have an 85 325E. I bought it last fall. I haven't written about it as much as because I don't have as much time to write as I would like. But I actually do have a cool story in mind that I would like to get written at some point about that engine itself, because it's such a hated motor, and it's something that kind of enthusiasts ignore. It's actually pretty good for what it is, and I've really enjoyed the car a lot. So yeah, I guess it is my daily driver. It's in very good shape. The air conditioning doesn't work, and which isn't going to be a problem for me in Texas until about April. And then I gotta get moving on fixing it. Yeah. I think it needs to do CV boots, but other than that, it's in really great shape, like inside and out for an E30. And I've enjoyed it thoroughly. It's a wonderful car. I don't have. I like cars that are period appropriate generally, so like I don't have big plans to modify it. I want to fix it up a little bit more than it is. Like starting with the AC and a couple other things, but no, I mean I plan on keeping it stock and just enjoying it for what it is and having it as this kind of cool, unique daily driver. Because they're great little cars, and they hail from that era of German over engineering, and it shows in every aspect of how it's built. And I'll keep it running as long as I can. I like the little thing.
It's a great little car. It's let me see here. Daily Drives a Dragon asks, are you ever going to get into another Camaro ever?
My wife has forbidden me from driving a Camaro ever. She's like, honest to Christ, like that's like after the jail thing and then the crash, like she's like no, like no more Camaros. And like I'm really curious with the new one. She's like, no, you can't, you fucking can't. So because I like her a lot, and I try to keep her happy, I'm just gonna stay out of them. I'll stick to Mustangs. I've never had a problem with a Mustang. Mm-hmm. Never taken one of Cars and Coffee either. Hey-o.
I was saying, what about a Challenger? Ever been? I mean, sure you've been in a Challenger.
Oh yeah, several. I like the Challenger a lot, actually. And I'm not a muscle car guy traditionally. Like I grew up more into like sports cars than muscle cars, but I love the new Challenger, especially the Scat Pack. Like that's like that naturally aspirated, like with a stick shift. That's the one to get. I'm a big fan of that car. It's the thing's okay with me.
I had two break down on me, so that's the Honda Rump asks if you could eradicate one current car manufacturer, which would it be and why?
God, if I could eradicate one current car maker. Boy, that's mean as shit. That's a really tough question. Because I try to be generally positive about everybody. Let me think.
Mm-hmm. This is like a Sophie's choice. Well, this is like
I would say, what the fuck has Nissan done for anybody lately? Like the GTR is awesome and it's great and I respect it, but like it's old enough now to buy its own cigarettes. Like I think I would take Nissan out back and be like, you have 5 years to get your shit together and make stuff that's like awesome and worth driving again, or like I'm going to eradicate you off the planet. That's what I would do. Like I don't know. I don't see a whole lot from Nissan that like makes me think like that's a company that just deserves to they're just kicking ass and they deserve to survive into the future.
Mm-hmm. I feel like what Nissan should do is they should take all their crazy engineers, the people who went, we should put the Juke, but we should have a GTR drivetrain in it. The guys who developed the GTR, the people who come up with like all the really random crazy shit that they come out with every now and again.
Mm-hmm. Every now and again, yeah.
They should just move them over to Mitsubishi, just make Mitsubishi the like. Who the fuck is going to buy this car company? And just let them put out the weirdest, most fucked up shit and just put a Mitsubishi badge on it, and I think we'd all love it.
Yeah, like make him like Citroen in the 70s. It's like who are you making this shit for? Like, I don't know, but it's awesome, Make Mitsubishi great again.
Mm-hmm. 3-wheel drive car, man. Who gives a crap?
Who gives a shit, right? Why not?
Steph, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Schrader asks, can I have a Trabant?
Tell her to get back to work.
Well, Steph, get back to work if you're listening to this. Let's see here. Does having to... we already kind of answered that one. This is... We kind of answered that.
That's like the least clever thing ever, by the way. I just want to say for the record, I've since I was in elementary school, I've had some dick wagon come up to me like, "Oh, you got 2 first names." Like, oh, and like, wow, you're just, God, you're a regular Jay Leto, aren't you? Like I've heard it all at this point. It just doesn't even faze me anymore. But like, if you bring that up, just know if you think you're clever, you're actually not at all, and you just have to live with that. So there you go.
I'm curious about this too. A lot of the people I know who have two first names have a very unique middle name. Do you have like just a crazy, like, is it Patrick Aloysius George? Something like
No,
that?
I wish it was. That'd be rad as shit. No, it's Edward. This is my father's first name. It's just pretty standard overall. So, I didn't pick it. It's, it's fine though.
Well, you kind of answered SKCog, or however you pronounce this, $KCog. But why'd you shave the beard?
Oh, my wife didn't like it. Also, I think I look better without it too. I feel better without it. It just the beard was for a bit, but it wasn't for me at the end of the day.
Yeah. I keep losing this because of the way this works on my phone. This Kinja stuff in my phone don't get along so well all the time. Lumpy44, we kind of treaded on this one, but I'll just bring it up. Thoughts on Motor Trend?
That when I get up out of bed every day, I say, Lord Jesus, thank you for Motor Trend. Thank you for making them exist. They are wonderful and perfect, and they're what I aspire to be every day. And just thank you for laying your blessings upon us with the latest issue of Motor Trend, whatever that is. When I go to the dentist once a year. So no. There's actually there's fine people who work there. That's they are what they are. We are what we are, and that is what it is. If you know what I mean.
I get what you mean. Just like, we kind of talked about them and the roadkill stuff and some of the other stuff. I treaded on some water we already treaded on, but
yeah, and roadkill, like I said, roadkill's excellent, and I that's something that if you were going to make. You're going to make video content on the internet right now in 2017, be like Roadkill. Don't be like, the bazillion other boring brands out there that just some asshole in jeans and a blazer walking around a new Hyundai describing how the air conditioning works. Like do fun stuff like Roadkill does. So those guys are all right in my book.
Don't be Doug, be Roadkill. That's what you're telling me. All right, guys.
No, Doug is great. Doug has done a lovely job at Auto Trader. He's always in cool stuff. I'm very proud of Doug, and he's a hardworking guy and smart and talented, and he's good people.
I agree with you up until he sold the S-Cargo, and now I'm sad, and now I'm angry at Doug.
Oh, I didn't realize he sold the S-Cargo. What didn't have the staying power he was after? I didn't know that.
He was saying that it didn't get enough views, which I get, but
it is. I mean, well, I can tell you that back when he was ready for us, we were kind of brainstorming on what the next Doug car should be, and it's the idea it wasn't just to buy some random car. You're going to buy something that people are going to care about. And that was one of the reasons, one of several, if I remember right, that he bought the R32 Skyline. Because that's a fucking internet car if there ever was one. Yeah. And every time he wrote about the Skyline, my Skyline did this, blah, 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 it would just rain traffic on Jalopnik. Same with the Ferrari, because the idea was I'm going to daily drive a used Ferrari. And not every car can command that kind of attention. This car goes funny and it's goofy. But I can also see why he didn't think it resonated with people on this mass level. Whereas his Viper certainly did,
Mm-hmm. Here's another one, and I'll try and kind of paraphrase this one. Dr. Jan Itor. He asked a long one. I'll try and summarize this. Basically, you have, the Kinja platform, and you have the different commenters on each. You have the grayed out people and the non-grayed out people. He's basically just wondering, why is it that, you might be out of the gray on, Jalopnik, but not on Gawker? Why not, if you're trusted by...
Well, nobody's on Gawker anymore, sadly, No, it's basic. I don't really know why that is. If it's up to the editors of each site to, follow people or whatever, depending, on the site they're on. We try, at least I try to follow... And pull out of the gray good commenters who have good usernames and good avatars. But I think that function is designed to prevent people from who might be really prolific, good Jalopnik commenters from trolling Jezebel all day long or something like that. That's my guess. But I mean, that's a technical issue, and that's that kind of stuff isn't really up to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was like, this might be not a great question, but it's on there, so I'm going to ask it.
The thing about Kinja is that now it works incredibly well. It really does, and it's stable and enables us to do a lot of really cool things. And we have some awesome stuff planned for it this year that I think that our readers are really going to like. Some really radical, crazy shit that they've never seen before. But at the same time, it's also like it's all these little things that have evolved over time that like I understand because I've been there since the beginning of Kinja. And when I sit a person down to explain how it works and why we do it and all this stuff, they look at me like I'm insane. I'm like, yeah, I it's like, yeah, it's like here's how you get out of like the Minotaur maze with like the laser orbs and like the dragon that shows up. Like, well, of course, does this make sense to you? It's how it is. It's how we live every day. So yeah, it is a little complex, but it works really well. It lets us do some neat things. So yeah,
it's. As someone who grew up and was on a technical aspect, I know C++, or I did C++, HTML. Having a platform that's able to, you have the sub-blogs like Opposite Lock, and then you have, the stuff that gets tons of traffic, and the fact that you're able to allocate resources and everything, and people give Kinja a hard time, but I do think it's a wonderful platform for just the vast ways this tool can be used, You can have someone like Will Clavey who starts his own blog, puts his own stuff up, and then that kind of morphs into a different thing, and it's able to handle traffic so very well. Sometimes freakouts happen. I'm sure, wasn't it yesterday there was a bit of a freakout on the site?
Those are rare, though. But, like, I remember, 4 years ago when we first did Kinja, like, that shit would go down for, an afternoon. And we would just be sitting there, writing stories in Microsoft Word, waiting for the system to be up so we could post things. That hasn't happened in a long, long time, thank God. So,
It's a great platform, and it's such a great tool for Jalopnik to use, and you have such great people on there, and you have such great commenters, and, we've reached the point where we're just about double time, so I probably should stop.
Oh man, I'm sorry I bloviated so much. You just cut this in half, Fuck it.
I could do it as two episodes. No, it's if it wasn't interesting, I definitely would have cut it off. It's having someone of your stature come on the show, talk with us. It's always an honor to have you. So I'd like to allocate you a little bit extra time over, the Will Clavies of the world. He's just
he's also. I mean, I don't know if I should bring this up on the podcast or not, but he's also Canadian, so
it's a little weird. It's a little hard.
Yeah. No, he's a good guy, and he does great work. We're happy to have him contributing these days.
Yeah, no, again, there's not a single. I go to other publications, I go to other sites, forums, whatever, anything else on the internet, and I go, I like this person, but this person's writing, it just doesn't jive with me. There's not a bad person on the staff at Jalopnik at all.
Well, thank you for saying so. I don't think so either. If they were, we'd throw them in a hole or something, or make them go work a Motor Trend.
That's what you do with you're bad, just go over to Motor Trend. But I think that speaks volumes about your capability, what you do there, the people and team you surrounded yourself with, and how you're able to weather last year and moving into the future, bigger and better things. It's always a pleasure to go to the site. It's almost the only source of automotive news for me, besides, Right Foot Down, those guys I work with, which I think Justin Hughes brought up something like, if you just want to subcontract us all, that's perfectly fine.
Those are good. They're good guys over there. They do good work. I'm always happy to see them do cool stuff. They talk about a dedicated group of enthusiasts who do this cool grassroots thing. They're good folks.
Well, I'm sure they'll be happy to hear you say that, and if they are still listening an hour, 53 minutes in.
Jesus.
Well, it's going to shorten up because we had the technical issue, so not quite that long. But I'm just trying to blow more smoke up your ass. You do such a fantastic job. I can't wait to hear and see and watch what's coming up with Jalopnik in 2017. It's going to be absolutely fantastic, I'm sure. It's always exciting. It's such an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Everyone listening, go visit Jalopnik. If you somehow are listening to my voice and you don't read it, there's something wrong with you. You need to go there and you need to read it. So, I mean, why not?
You're very sweet. Checks in the mail, my man.
It's what I do. it's such a good site. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off for the evening?
No, not at all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reading us. And we have cool stuff to come this year. I hope that our readers will join us for it, because it's going to be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Everyone who's listening, hold on, I'll be right back with you. Patrick, I'm going to say goodbye to you off air. Everyone, jalopnik.com, and your personal Twitter account is at Patrick George, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It's at by Patrick George.
At by Patrick
but I'd rather you follow the Jalopnik account on Twitter if you're going to follow anybody, because part of my job is I'm judged by social growth. So yeah, follow that instead.
So go to
follow, like us on Facebook. If you know this, if you followed us on Twitter, etc.
Mm-hmm. What is it? You got the Facebook account, you got the Twitter account. Does Jalopnik have an Instagram account?
We have a pretty rad Instagram these days, actually, and it's like people are like, I'm just sick of like politics on Jalopnik. It's like, it's like just fucking false on Instagram. It's all it is photos of cars. You'll be happier there.
Yeah. Is there a Snapchat?
No. So we don't think Snapchat is gonna like survive. It's kind of the word on the streets. So like we're gonna be doing Instagram video more and more the coming year. But like we had a Snapchat for a while. I don't think anybody really uses it anymore. I don't think that platform is long for this world. So I would just focus on those for now. Like I said, it was what I said earlier about being hard to break into the current media environment with new platforms, new apps. People, it's kind of at the point where like the established players are what people are used to, and breaking into that is tough. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. All right, I think that's
also none of us know how to use Snapchat because it's only for like teenagers. So,
I think once you hit 12, you don't know how to use it. I'm pretty sure that's
I have no fucking. I tried once and I was just like, I would turn into a big fight with my wife and I, and we were like, this is stupid. So,
all right, well, everyone, we'll be right back. Go follow Jalopnik everywhere. Just type in Jalopnik on the web browser and just follow everything that comes up on every app you use. All right. And we're back. All right. So at Jalopnik on Facebook. Search for them on Instagram. Look for them on Twitter at Jalopnik. Everywhere. Facebook. I think I already said that. Just go out, find Jalopnik, follow them on the social media stuff. That helps, Patrick George grow. That helps Jalopnik grow. Speaking of growing, why don't you tell a friend, loved one, or coworker if you enjoyed what you heard today? That's the best way for the podcast to grow and develop and get great guests and continue bringing great guests like Patrick George to you. So if you could tell a friend, loved one, coworker, we're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we're on Google Play, we're on most media platforms that do podcasting. So just go find one of those, download it, show them how to do it. If they don't know how to do that, just go to the web browser. We're available on web browser at Untitled Car Show, or it's Untitled Car Show, Podomatic.com. You can follow me at Untitled Car Show on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram, but I'm not great at that yet. Same thing with Facebook. And you can follow our West Coast correspondent, Ryan Nader, at RyanNader122. That's Ryan West at RyanNader122. Thank you so much for listening to this show. Have a good night. Have a good evening. Wherever you are, whatever time it is there. Thank you so much for listening. Be safe out there.